The state of Florida is where woke goes to die.
This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important queer theory, that is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids?
You mean to tell me that the history of those people isn't important? You're saying that the history of America isn't important? Because it's not really Black history, it's the history of America. Honestly, he don't know what he's talking about.
Can you imagine European studies or Western civilizations has no inherent value whatsoever?
We have teachers who are not able to teach the curriculum because they disagree with Ron DeSantis and his view of the world. That is limiting free speech.
They are trying to shield students.
We are nothing without our history, which is exactly why conservatives are going after public education in America to erase, dismantle, and write the true account of our past. What happened on this soil, the oppression that was fought and overcome we are in. History is vital, as is knowledge. It's why education is so often ground zero in the U.S. culture wars. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' apparent White House ambition strikes at the heart of the American classroom. On a bid to block an advanced placement course in African American studies, saying it lacks educational value. It's that fight, which DeSantis started, that has brought protesters, clergy, political and civil rights leaders in Tallahassee to the shadow of the old Capitol building that once served as Florida's seat of Confederate secession. Could prove to be his first big political mistake. Fighting to kill wokeness, their message to the governor: keep your political agenda out of our schools.
So how can you stand and try to rewrite history for a race of individuals that you are not even a part of?
Really, you just don't want to talk about the tough parts of history? History is a beautiful, ugly story, and you got to embrace all of it.
Black history does not make anybody uncomfortable. Racist people uncomfortable. Injustice makes people uncomfortable.
I've been people who have been mistreated throughout history because African American history is America's history.
You should have left us alone. Now you have us all together. If you would study history, Governor, you would have known to mess with us into your defeat. I heard you say that Florida is the state where woke comes to die. We came to tell you, Governor, you just resurrected woke with more power than it has ever had. Thank you for trying to kill it.
Well, we are live from Tallahassee at the Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, where Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network kicked off today's march to the old state capitol to protest Florida's war on Black history. The crowd behind me is our very own Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network and host of Politics Nation, Florida State Senator Chevron Jones, and State Representative Michelle Rayner Goolsby. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to go to you first, Rick. You know, education has always been at the core of the fight for Black equality and advancement, going all the way back to make it being illegal to know how to read. What do you make of the fact that this governor has decided that education is the ground where he wants a certain group of white voters?
He's hitting at the core of liberating people, because you can't hold people down if they're enlightened. And if you can censor what they know, then you can, in many ways, inhibit their behavior. And it's we, those of us that are descendants of those that were enslaved, know that our great-grandparents, my great-grandfather was a slave in Florida. And it was against the law for him to read or write, and whites would be prosecuted and endangered if they taught a slave how to read and write. Passed. And you now going to tell us that we will decide what part of black history is acceptable and comfortable to us? Well, we need to talk about what was uncomfortable for blacks and others, for Latinos, for poor discomfort. The history of America is trying to deal with everybody's plight in this experiment for democracy, not try to eliminate the parts you want. And he's doing it for political reasons, Joy. He feels if I can do what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump, Barack Obama was other. And then he went on from there with other racial kind of tones. So now we have Ron DeSantis, who I call Baby Crump, who is now trying to do the baby Trump thing and come with a new racial divide, like he is in some way from its past, rather than to say, let's glorify that these people were enslaved and fought their way all the way to where we put a black man in the White House, re-elected him, and have a black woman as vice president today. Tell the whole story, baby Trump.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you sit on talk about this all the time on the show. I mean, going through and doing the research for this show today, what was astounding to me, someone came up to me and said this to me, and then we went and verified it. Only 11 out of 67 counties right now are following the law.
That's right.
It is the law in the state of Florida, going back to 1994, that add the AP courses, which are voluntary for advanced students.
Right.
It's not being taught in the vast majority properly in the vast majority of counties, and the Department of Education division that's supposed to fund creating the curricula is deeply underfunded. Absolutely. So this is not a war he started, DeSantis, with the AP course.
No, absolutely. African American studies has always been a divisive issue in being taught the right way. In 1993, when I was in third grade, then Senator Frederica Wilson is the one who carried that legislation to make sure that African American studies could be taught. Even in those that are supposed to do checks and balances to see whether or not it's being taught correctly. It only has one staffer within that task force, and it's already not properly funded. But let's put this in perspective. Right now, within the state of Florida, the governor, he's not trying to tell us, he's trying to referee how it's taught. Right. And that's the problem that we're dealing with. And lastly, you look at the teachers now. Teachers don't even want to touch teaching African-American history, right, because they're scared, they're fearful that they're going to be fired. And that's all they wanted to do. As you can see, this